Hello and welcome to Oh and That's a Bad Miss. Sorry I forgot about last week. Well, I didn't forget about last week. I bit off more than I could chew. This 2018 year in review is rather large. I've got 2 full pages of notes and it took me a lot longer to do than I thought it would. And with all the New Year celebrations and Christmas celebrations, I didn't really give myself enough time to do it. So apologies for missing a week. I didn't think that was going to happen this quickly. Hope you guys enjoy this one. Should be a nice long one. Like I said, I've got 2 pages of notes full of snooker, and it should keep you guys going until the Masters start next week. It feels like a while since we watched any snooker. Before we get into the episode, as ever, this is brought to you by reddit.com/r/snooker, a series of discussion threads where you can come talk about anything about snooker. I'm a moderator there. Come and have a chat with me. Come and have a chat with anyone. We've got a nice little community, especially during the Masters, where obviously during the big 3, the subs numbers increase. And we got more people chatting, more people passionate about the game we're all passionate about. And yeah, if you're looking for someone to talk about snooker, head over to reddit.com/r/snooker. Hope you guys had a happy new year. I did, I think, from what I remember. Half bottle of vodka and falling asleep at 10:30. So hope you guys had a better one than I did. Yeah, I can't handle my drink. Anyway, moving on to 2018, last year. Absolutely cracking year for snooker in some ways. In other ways, it was controversial, maybe a bit disappointing in the way the amount of match fixing scandals that happened and how a lot of the mainstream attention we got was negative. I've got a mate who he's a big sports fan, knows the basics of snooker, doesn't really follow it, and anytime I talk to him about it, he's like, yeah, the only thing I hear about snooker is the negative. And that's the truth. The mainstream media, with anything, is focused on the negatives. That's always going to get the bigger attention. But snooker is going to be focused on those negatives just like anything else. It's just snooker doesn't have as many positives this year. But this is a positive podcast. It's a chance to look back at 2018 in a lovely light, in a positive light, and look forward to 2019 and see where we go. So the first tournament of the year, of course, was the Masters in January at Alexandra Palace. Rose Sullivan came in defending champ, but was knocked out in the quarterfinals, and that was his first Masters defeat since 2015, which is huge. I mean, going from 2015 to 2018 in any tournament without losing a match is massive, but the Masters, the fact that he didn't enter for 1 year, obviously a big deal, but that's pretty huge. 2 debutants. I think I've only ever read that word. You know, when you come to a word and you've only ever read it and never actually said it out loud. Debutants were Luca Brecel and Anthony McGill, 2 players who had cracking seasons the season before. This year, not so good, as we'll find out. 2018, not great for McGill. I think that's Anthony McGill's last mention in my 2 full pages. So I think that says a lot. And Luca Brecel is only mentioned negatively, unfortunately. He's gone from winning his first ranking event to nothing. He's being knocked out in early rounds. Hopefully next year. I know he had some cue troubles for a while, but that should be that should be sorted by now. So it hasn't really got an excuse. I don't think that he's made public. We'll have to wait and see. Kyron Wilson came into the tournament having never won a Masters match. He'd entered the year before, knocked out in the first round, and last year was his debut. He made it all the way to the final against Mark Allen. He was defeated 10-7, and if you guys are ever questioning snooker players' love of the sport, you go watch that post-match interview with Kyron Wilson, and it will break your heart because it was 10-7. It was a relatively close match. Wilson felt like he had some momentum going nearer the end, but Mark Allen came in and bang, finished him off. And Kyron Wilson, it was difficult. Very difficult to watch and listen to the man sort of just lay his heart on the line and lose in the final. But like I said, it's only his second time at the Masters and he's made it to the final. We'll see how he does next week. And everyone's saying he's got a big future ahead of him. O'Sullivan's called him a future world champion. But then again, he did say that about Judd Trump. But they're same age, so... Mark Selby, two-time champion before this, kickstarts 2018 poorly with a loss in the first round to Mark Williams, to be fair. But Selby was already struggling for form, and to be knocked out in the first round wasn't what he wanted from the Masters to start his season. He really wanted to get in there and pick up some form. He's been patchy for the last couple of years. It is a shame after having, was it 2016-17 season, where he dominated the game. He did what people are saying that O'Sullivan's is dominating like no one ever has. But Selby was on it like nothing else during that season. Next tournament was the German Masters in the Tempodrome in Berlin. Gorgeous arena. I mean, it's probably one of the ones in mainland Europe that I'd most like to visit. And I got some friends out in Germany, so maybe one day. It was in early February, and Mark Williams just wiped the floor with everyone. I mean, this was him showing the form that, spoilers, would lead him to become world champion. My God, he wiped the floor with Graham Dott in the final, 9-1. It was a bit of a letdown, to be fair, but absolutely brutal from Mark Williams. He found the form that he carried for the rest of that season. Mark Selby, again, two tournaments in a row, out in the first round, this time losing 5-3 to Zhao Gudong. Zhao is a very good player, but until one of those Chinese players really wins a world title, and I don't think any of them will have the confidence to be the next big thing. It's a shame. They're always on the brink of making it over, but they never quite make it. It's like Ding. Ding is one of the best players probably of all time, but he hasn't won that world title. People don't fully believe in him, and especially this season he's in the same basket as Mark Selby, although Selby had a way better year in 2018 than Ding did. It's just because Selby is world number one, people expect even bigger things from him. After this, we had a controversial tournament, the shootout. It's always controversial. I think it's fine because it's a once-a-year thing, and as long as it keeps a shot clock out of regular snooker and it keeps the darts sort of crowd away from regular snooker, then it's fine by me. But I prefer if the shootout wasn't a ranking event. It feels unfair that the money won in the shootout goes towards the rankings. It's like, so Graham Dott lost to Michael Giorgio in the final of this, and it's a one-frame 10-minute shootout, easy peasy. It's easy to watch for someone turning onto ITV4. Just sometimes snooker can drag and it will turn people off it, but watching a 10-minute frame, quick, easy, done, match over, perfect. Not a ranking thing for me, but because of Michael Giorgio winning this match, he made it into the World Grand Prix the week after. His ranking skyrocketed. He made it into multiple events, which he wouldn't have anyway, and he hasn't really performed that well in any of the events. So did he deserve a place in them? Yes, because everyone else was fully aware that the shootout was ranking, and a lot of people don't enter it. But I must say, I don't think the shootout should be a ranking event. Speaking of the World Grand Prix, that was next. One of the ITV tournaments. I quite like ITV. The only difference between that and the BBC coverage is ITV does feel quite budget because they're throwing it on ITV4. They have a little studio, a couple of commentators, and it's clearly just cheap TV to throw on ITV4 to keep it as the sports channel on ITV, which is fine by me. More snooker on the telly, and they always employ Stephen Hendry, Alan McManus, and Clive Everton. So what more can you want from snooker? The World Grand Prix obviously takes place in the Guildhall in Preston in mid-February. The top 32 in the one-year ranking list, so not the proper ranking list, just the one-year ranking list, compete in that tournament. O'Sullivan defeated Ding Junhui 10-3, which is obviously not great for Ding, but it's a final. It's the first form Ding had all year, and that's still something he hasn't quite found now he's still struggling, but obviously birth of his daughter, I believe, his firstborn child, either way, obviously is going to detract from snooker. You're going to spend more time thinking about your firstborn child than you are snooker, and it's totally understandable. But I hope he is one of my favourite players, and I do hope he wins the world one day, or at least returns to the form which I think he won 5 ranking events in one season. So I'd like to see him go back to that form at some point. The Welsh Open was next in early March in the Motorpoint Arena in Cardiff. It's the first of the Home Nations. If you're not aware, the Home Nations events, obviously Wales, Northern Ireland, England and Scotland, I think. Yeah, and if you win all 4, you get £1 million. Obviously, no one's come even close to winning all 4, because winning 4 tournaments, and no one this year, let me have a look at I put a little table at the bottom, no one in 2018 won 4 ranking events. So it's at all. The closest was 3 with O'Sullivan and Williams, won 3 in 2018. Shows just how difficult it is. And to win those specific home nations, which are best 128 players, I believe, and it's not seeded, so you've just got to fight your way through. If a top player managed to win all 4 of them, they deserve a hell of a lot more than £1 million. But £1 million, not half bad, and that's what Barry Hearn brings to the game, is him giving that extra boost of incentive. It's the same thing he's done with the PDC. Watching the darts as it happened last week, we had the PDC World Championships over now, huge show, huge prize money, lots of everything, big show, typical Barry Hearn. And then at the moment we got the BDO Lakeside World Championships. Not as good. The quality's not there because the players who play at the highest standard are being brought to the PDC. The money's not there in the BDO. It shows what Barry Hearn can do to sports by almost Americanizing it, with the cheerleaders on the stage, and they've got rid of walk-on girls, but you still got cheerleaders, fireworks, very colourful, American. But you got to take the good with the bad. The prize money's great because it means the quality is better. Yeah, tell me what you guys think about Barry Hearn's involvement in the game. I know it's a very, very controversial subject to a lot of people. Anyway, back to the Welsh Open, which I will be attending this year. Very much excited to see the final there. John Higgins won that, which was his 30th ranking event. Huge number. I mean, to win 30 ranking events, I know he's been around for years, but incredible, 30 ranking events. It shows that he's probably one of the guys that a lot of people fail to mention when talking about the best of all time. But he's definitely up there, despite of the match fixing allegations and blah blah blah. If you want to hear my opinions on that, I believe it was the last episode, go have a listen to that, and I cover what I thought about it in there. He won the final against Barry Hawkins, I think I covered this last episode as well, but he has only ever won 3 ranking events. This would have been his 4th against John Higgins' 30th. Hawkins will always be sort of a mid-table. If he was a football club, he'd be mid-table, I'm afraid, unless he finds some real form in the late years of his career. We had a couple of minor tournaments over there. We had the Gibraltar Open and the Romanian Masters, with the Gibraltar Open being a ranking event and the Romanian Invitational Masters obviously being invitational. Now, the reason I mention those two together is because Ryan Day won both. Huge! Ryan Day had won the Riga Masters in 2018 as well, and that was his first ranking event, and then he comes and wins the Gibraltar Open, doubling his tally. Pretty incredible for a player who a lot of people thought maybe he'll never actually do it. The Romanian Invitational was a bit weird. It was just sort of, until like 3 weeks before the event happened on World Snooker website, it was just listed as possible European invitational tournament, so not many people watched it. But either way, very good for Ryan Day, and gave him a hell of a lot of momentum coming into the Players Championship, which came on next on ITV in Llandudno, Wales in late March. O'Sullivan showing his dominance this year, defeated Sean Murphy 10-4, another final which didn't particularly go too close. We've had a few which have gone very close, but a lot of finals have have been won by 4, 5, 6 frames this year. It's a bit of a shame because it always feels it's like the darts again, where Michael van Gerwen just wiped the floor with Smith this final, and it's like a wet fart at the end of a great tournament. Now, obviously, this was part of the last season, and it brought Ronnie O'Sullivan up to his 5th ranking event for the season, which is a record equaling Stephen Hendry, Ding Junhui, and Mark Selby's record. And that's 4 cracking players to be together with. Obviously, Ding, Selby, and O'Sullivan have had the benefit of there being so many ranking events now. The fact Stephen Hendry managed to win 5 ranking events in a season when there are a hell of a lot less ranking events each season is incredibly impressive, and to me may show why Stephen Hendry was possibly in his peak better than O'Sullivan, but obviously didn't have the longevity that O'Sullivan has had in the later stages of his career. Now, the China Open was the last tournament before the World Championships, and it's always a big one because people are desperate to prove that they're in form to go into the Worlds, and one person who needed that form more than anyone else was Mark Selby, defending world champion, trying to prove that, no, this season hasn't gone great for me, but by God am I going to turn it around for the World Championships. And the China Open, longer frames, I think it's best of 19 most of the way through, and he won it. He beat Barry Hawkins, another final, again for Hawkins' defeat, which is a shame because this was a big final. Defeated him 11-3, so another one that was a whitewash. £225,000 to Mark Selby. Like I said, it's a huge amount of money, and obviously a huge moral victory to go into the Worlds, like I think a week and a half later, knowing that you're world number 1 and no one's going to stop you from being world number 1. It's Selby's dominance at the top may be coming to an end, but I don't think we can ever in the future not look back at this period of time and realise how dominant that man was for such a long period of time. He has been world number 1 with no changes for so long that it's almost a foregone conclusion, and it will be very interesting to see whether it will be Williams, O'Sullivan who take him off the top spot. Now, on to the Worlds. It was an absolutely belting tournament. You had controversy with the shoulder barge between Ali Carter and Ronnie O'Sullivan, which a lot of people are not going to be happy when they look at it back and realise, no, O'Sullivan was definitely in the wrong there. Obviously, Ali Carter is known for having a bit of a volatile personality, but Ronnie led with the shoulder barge. Carter was never going for it. He just saw O'Sullivan barged into him, and obviously tensions are going to flare. It was the quarterfinals or the round of 16, I can't remember, of the World Championships, and it was a huge deal to both players, and you could tell by the celebration when Carter went on to win that match how much it meant to him. Absolutely huge. But obviously the biggest story of the Worlds was Mark voice cracks, I swear I'm over the age of 12, was Mark Williams' resurgence into the scene of snooker. He almost retired 2 years ago when he didn't make the Masters. He did multiple interviews saying, I just think my time's coming to the end with the game, in a similar vein to how John Higgins is now. But Mark Williams comes along, defeats Higgins in an absolutely belting final. I was in London in a hotel room, and I was on FaceTime to a girl, and I was like, London, hotel room to yourself, FaceTime to a girl, who knows what could happen. I've got snooker on the telly, I'm completely ignoring her, watching the snooker. My God, what a match that was. Don't regret a second of it. And that was Mark Williams' third world title, 15 years after his second, and he became the second oldest winner at the Crucible after Ray Reardon, I believe. I didn't know that down. Incredible, honestly. But obviously with every good news comes bad news, and you got John Higgins losing 2 years in a row, and that's what's led to him becoming so disenfranchised with the sport. He's struggling for form. He's struggling for motivation. We'll see whether he ends up retiring or whether he does a Mark Williams and turns it round and wins the world title in the next couple of years. That would be incredible. Now, Mark Selby, after coming out the China Open, you would have thought, let's do this, lad. Absolute belt and performance. Incredible play in the China Open. Nope. Lost 10-4 to Joe Perry in the very first round. Without that win at the China Open, he would have been risking his world number one spot. Williams could have possibly... Williams less likely, but O'Sullivan, I think, would have pushed him for world number one if Selby had not won at the China Open. And obviously after the tournament, you had the naked press conference, which I don't think anyone ever saw coming. But it happened, and he was very much naked. That's Mark Williams, just strolling around naked. And what I found funny was listening to Mark talk about it. I believe it was on Bayswatch, the YouTube video series by World Snooker, and how he went out the back and he was willing to just walk out butt naked, just stroll through, no questions asked, just go to the thing. Obviously Barry Hearn saw the money and dollar signs in his eyes, wrapped the Betfair, I think it was Betfair, so one of the sponsors' towels around his waist, and it's like, okay, this is going to be big news. We'll get the sponsors there. We'll keep the sponsors happy. They'll be paying more. I just thought that was quite a funny way to see exactly how the mind of Barry Hearn works. So after your big long break after the Worlds, which, my God, did that drag. It's always sad after that, because it's, 2.5 months before we have any real snooker, before we have any ranking events. We had the Riga Masters in late July, so yeah, long time. And Neil Robertson won again. That's his second time winning in 3 years. So in 2016, it was Neil Robertson. 2017 was Ryan Day. And 2018 was once again Neil Robertson. Seems to be able to kickstart his season well when then nothing else. He's strange. He's Neil Robertson, Thunder from Down Under, one of the best of all. Looked like he was going to be one of the best of all time, winning the Worlds. First player from outside the British Isles to win the World since Cliff Thorburn, I believe. And then struggled for form. Struggled with, I believe, a World of Warcraft addiction, which, I'll be honest, I almost got to that point myself. It's one of those things where video games can take over your life, but Garci's on the mend and possibly coming back to form, because he missed the Masters a few years ago, but hasn't missed it since, so good for him. Jack Lisowski, great player, was in the final against Neil Robertson, obviously losing. Would have been his first ranking event win, but unfortunately losing in the final. Lisowski is a great player, but he's similar to Judd Trump in that if he has a hurdle, he falls at the first. He falls. If he stumbles, he falls. He can't recover. And I believe that's what separates the great from the average, is the ability to win when you're not playing your best. The next tournament, back to China, and I think when you look back at this, you see just how much travelling these guys do and why they're complaining about burnout, and why I think they have to be so much more selective than they are at the moment over which tournaments they compete in. You had the World Open in Yushan, China in mid-August, with Mark Williams, again, world champion, returning to form, defeating Dave Gilbert 10-9 in the final, and this was a rough one to watch. This was almost like the Scottish Open the year before, with Chow Yu-Peng losing to Neil Robertson despite having like a 5-6 frame lead with only 1 frame needed to win and not being able to do it. Obviously, Chow Yu-Peng's reputation in the game isn't quite where it was because of the match fixing, and now he's banned. So sadly, losing in the final of the Scottish Open will be the peak of Chow Yu-Peng's career by the looks of it. But Dave Gilbert was 9-5 up in the World Open final, but lost the next 5 frames on the bounce, and that would have been his first ranking event. And to win your first is often the springboard to winning many more, and it's always a shame to watch an underdog fight so hard and get so close and then just be brought down. As much as I love Mark Williams, that title win would have meant a hell of a lot more to Dave Gilbert than it did Mark Williams. Next up, we had the Paul Hunter Classic, which is a ranking event, but it's so small. It's not covered by Eurosport properly. It's not covered by anyone really. It's such a shame because Paul Hunter's memory does deserve more. One of the greatest young players to be lost to the game. It's always sad the way that tournament has been handled and treated, and the fact that the match fixing may have been the straw that broke the camel's back. Either way, this year it was Kyron Wilson defeating Peter Ebdon 4-2 in the final. Incredible, like Peter Ebdon being in the final with a ranking event, pretty special for him. Although obviously not a particularly exciting game, which probably didn't help the viewership of the Paul Hunter Classic. This was only Kyron Wilson's second ranking event win. For a man who has so much hype about him, talking about future world champions, maybe you would have thought he'd have a few more title wins, but future is bright for Kyron, I see. The next non-ranking event which I'm going to cover is the Shanghai Masters, and that's mainly because Ronnie O'Sullivan won it 11-9 against Barry Hawkins. That's Barry Hawkins' third time mentioning by me losing in a final in 2018. But this brought O'Sullivan over 10 million career pounds won in snooker. He won £200,000 for winning the Shanghai Masters. And the fact that he's won over £10 million, my God, what must that be like? Being able to play this game you love, and that's not all he's got going, has he? He's got books. Debatable how much he wrote of them. He's got books. A book series. He's got TV presenting with Eurosport. He's got TV presenting separately. He's got plenty of stuff in the fire, and yet he's just from snooker won £10 million. That must be rather nice. And obviously that made him the first player to reach that threshold. The China Championship, there must be something about Mark Selby and China and big prize money, because he won £150,000 in Guangzhou. Sorry for my pronunciation there, I'm not very good with pronouncing English words, let alone Chinese, and that was a deciding frame against John Higgins, which is great to see. John Higgins struggling for form since the World Championship, against Mark Selby struggling for form since the China Open, the tournament before, go to a deciding frame, 9 apiece, belt-in match, and yeah, Mark Selby comes out on top, £150,000, keeps him on top of the rankings for a little bit longer. Luca Brecel was the defending champion. It was a year since he won his first ranking event, but lost in the first round to Martin O'Donnell. Like I said earlier, Luca Brecel, what's happened, mate? What's happened? The European Masters came next in Lommel, Germany, and this was a proper underdog story as Jimmy Robertson won his first ranking title, beating Joe Perry 9-6 in the final. Jimmy Robertson first turned pro in 2002, and to win his first ranking event all these years, he must have given up hope years ago, because he dropped off the tour for a while, came back in 2009, but he must have given up hope. He must have not thought he was good enough to win a ranking event, but he did it. He won the European Masters, and before this tournament, he'd never made a semi-final. To go from never making it past the quarterfinals to winning a ranking event, you could see it on his face when he brought his family out, his little kid, his missus. One of those moments where sport was more than just a sport, and it's really nice and heartwarming to see. After that, we had the English Open, another home nations event in Crawley, which was won by Stuart Bingham. The biggest story on the table was definitely Mark Davis thrashing Ronnie O'Sullivan in the semi-finals, 6-1. I could not believe that. I was out on a night out and I was checking my phone constantly because I couldn't believe what was happening. We'd all assumed it was going to be a Stuart Bingham, Ronnie O'Sullivan final, and then out of nowhere, Mark Davis, player whom no one expected to beat O'Sullivan, especially O'Sullivan, having already won many ranking events earlier in the year, goes and beats him. But the controversy really for this tournament was off the table, and that was with the venue. There was no real separation from the players and the fans, so you'd have to, and just regular people using the leisure centre. O'Sullivan came out to the BBC and spoke about the smell of urine as well. So, yeah, Barry Hearn, I see the money's going somewhere, but not exactly into improving the venues. Apparently it improved near the end of the tournament, but still for a televised tournament, a part of the home nations with the best players in the world, you can't accept that, can you? You can't accept that level of disrepair to the arena. After that, we had the International Championships in Dashing, China. I believe that's how that's pronounced. And China just offering up these huge prize pots. £175,000 to the winner, and that was Mark Allen defeating Neil Robertson 10-5 in the final. And by God, are China good at getting the money behind. I believe it's because the Chinese government connected with Barry Hearn, and the money that they pump into this game is huge. The China Open's prize pool's huge. This one's huge, the International Championship. But the crowds never seem to be that big unless you've got O'Sullivan, Ding Junhui. That's about it, or any of the younger Chinese lads. But the crowds just don't seem that interested. They always seem to be on their phones or just sort of asleep a lot, which is weird. I was talking to someone on Reddit about this who'd lived in China, and apparently a lot of the Chinese culture is more about being for show. So the fact that it's there and the money's there is more to them than having a great tournament with a big crowd like we would like. Either way, Mark Allen starting off well this season, winning the Masters the year winning the Masters, and then that's a lot of money in his pocket. Not too many a good amount of ranking points, but not as many as you would have thought, because the Masters obviously is just an invitational tournament and not ranking. The Northern Ireland Open followed, with Judd Trump winning against Ronnie O'Sullivan in the final. So O'Sullivan proven not to be human in finals of tournaments. Judd Trump, 9th ranking title. For a man who's been pro for a good few years now and has all the ability in the world and can play some naughty snooker, 9 ranking events? I would have thought he should be a bit higher than that and should maybe be dominating a bit more, and at least just be a bit less inconsistent. He's very inconsistent. Excuse me. Long week. Up next was the UK Championships. Oh, beautiful tournament. I love this tournament. Covered by the BBC every year. One of the Triple Crown ones. And this one made no exceptions. Mark Allen making it to another final. Straight off. Not quite straight off, but after his International Championship success. Losing to Ronnie 10-6 in the final. And the big story behind that was this was a huge tournament for Ronnie. This title made Ronnie the most successful Triple Crown winner of all time, the most successful UK champion of all time, and was the first player since Stephen Hendry in 1996 to defend the UK title. Arguments for him to be the best ever. We've had this discussion before. Go back and listen to my opinions in past episodes. And the problem is there's no way of knowing for real who's the best ever. So we'll just have to debate forever. The passion shown by O'Sullivan in the celebrations was pretty incredible. Pouring the champagne all over his body, jumping in the crowd. He was really getting into it. He said it was because he wanted to give back to the crowd, but you could tell, my God, he was enjoying himself. And that's what you want. That's when I want to see O'Sullivan play, is when he's enjoying himself, when he doesn't give a shit anymore. He just wants to play some snooker and win. Problem is, that's probably only 50% of the time with O'Sullivan. But by God, that was a great night to watch some snooker. The final tournament of last year was the Scottish Open, which started the day after the UK Championships ended. Not particularly great calendar management there from World Snooker, but Mark Allen went from a final the tournament before to winning this. Pretty huge. Victory against Sean Murphy, 9-7 in the final. John Higgins making a 147 during the tournament, as we covered a few weeks ago. This was once the podcast had already started. 147, despite saying how much he was hating the game. So that's always nice to hear. How despite everything can be going wrong for John Higgins, he can still find some form. And Mark Allen winning another tournament is always nice. Quite like Mark Allen, he's a good lad. Seems to speak how he sees it. And if he can retain his Masters title, that would be absolutely huge. Because he's in form, and we never know. We'll see. We shall see. I'll cover that when I do my Masters preview. And that's it. That's 2018. What a year. And that's just the ranking events and some major invitationals. We had the World Seniors starting up. We had all the controversies off the table, which I've covered before. Yeah, some of them weren't so great, but the rest of the year was absolutely huge. But back to the present day, this week we've been having the Champions League, which is a tournament. It's a bit nothing-y. It starts on New Year's Day. Not many players really enter it. It's just a good way to bump up some extra cash, I guess, over Christmas for some of the players. But the biggest news, I'd say, was Lisowski defeating Luca Bressel in 27 minutes. Wow, that's a quick match. 27 minutes to win, I think it was a best of 5, which is still less than half an hour. That's incredible, which shows when Lisowski is good, he is bloody good. Yeah, so that has already been going for nearly 40 minutes. So thank you guys for listening. I think I better leave it here because otherwise I'm going to bore you all to death and I'm going to run out of words. As I said before, this has been brought to you by reddit.com/r/snooker. Go check them out. Good lads over there. Good group of people. Thank you guys for listening. 2018, belting year, started a podcast. Support from you guys. Personal life, best year of my life, but no one gives a shit about that. I'll just leave you with the fact that in 2018 we had 12 different ranking event winners. And despite people saying how dominant Ronnie O'Sullivan has been, 12 different ranking event winners shows how open and even the field is. And 2019, I guarantee, will be just as good as 2018. And I cannot wait to cover it here with all of you guys. And if you want to stay up to date with that, hit the like button, hit the subscribe on whatever platform you're on, and share the news about the podcast with your friends. So thank you guys for listening, and I will see you next week for a Masters preview.